Okay. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about Blood of the Chupacabras. I watched it this morning and I liked it. I love these. I love that these old movies that are like a new generation never heard of are coming back to life.
Oh,
And this is one of them. And this was a good one. I haven't seen this one yet until today, but I really enjoyed this one.
well, great. I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun to make. It was a lot more trouble to make than we thought it was when we first got into it. But yeah, I'm glad you liked it. Thanks.
So, how did you come up with the idea for this movie?
Well, back in the late '90s, when the Chupacabras was first being talked about, I remember I had seen an editorial that ran in our local newspaper, the Sacramento Bee, that had been reprinted actually from the New York Times, and it was about the Chupacabras, and I'd never heard of it, and I was fascinated by the story of it, and I'd always been a big horror movie fan, and I'd always wanted to make movies. In fact, I had spent 5 years in Hollywood as a struggling actor and voiceover artist. But I had gone into television news after my Hollywood time. So I hadn't really, that Hollywood would come up to Sacramento occasionally and do something on location. And I was often called upon, to do those reporter parts, where you see the reporter in the film. But that's not much of a challenge when you are a reporter. But anyway, I had read this editorial, and I thought, whoever makes the movie about this creature, it'll be the first movie ever made. It'd be like you've got a new monster that you can that you can showcase. And so I decided to research it, and I did, and found out everything I could about the Chupacabras, and wrote a script. And then with the script, I had a friend who worked at the TV station with me who owned a 16mm camera. And in fact, he had just finished shooting a film that led its director on to fame and fortune, Blood, Guts, Bullets, and Octane, Joe Carnahan, who actually worked at
Oh, wow.
He worked at a competing station. He was at Channel 31. He was a promotions producer there. And they had just shot that movie. And in fact, as a reporter, I had gone to Sundance with a photographer and followed Joe and his crew around while they showed off their movie. But anyway, so his cinematographer, John Alexander Menes, shot with me. We shot a couple of scenes on 16mm film. And we had this idea that once these scenes were shown to investors, they were going to shower us with money because they could see what potential the Chupacabras movie idea had. Well, of course, that didn't happen. And what did happen was we just didn't have any money to finish it. So I put the cans of film up on the shelf and figured, whatever. And about a year later, one of the engineers at the TV station came to me and he says, have you ever thought about, finishing your movie? And I said, well, I'd love to do it, but I don't have the money. And he says, well, what if you could shoot it on digital video? And this was kind of a new thing, digital video. And the Canon XL15, I think it was, had just come out. And he had purchased one of these cameras. And he said, it's a lot cheaper, to use DV tape than movie film. And I thought, yes, it is. And he said, but if you do use the camera, I have one thing to ask. And I said, what's that? And he said that when you're done with the movie, you teach me how to use the camera because I have no idea how to do it. So, okay, well, we agreed with that. And then we shot this movie, but it actually took from beginning to end, it took like 4 years. But we finally did get it finished. We had it in a couple of film festivals, and it was a lot of fun in the end.
That's amazing. I mean, you're pretty much the pioneer of the Chupacabra horror film, you could say, because ever since then, we've had other films revolving around the creature, and
right.
I remember seeing one called Indigenous that came out in 2014, and it actually was directed by one of my favorite directors, Alistair Orr, and it was like, and it involved the Chupacabra, and I was even shocked to even find out that Heather Langenkamp and her husband were the people who created the Chupacabra for the movie, and I was like, holy cow, that's amazing. And the chupacabra comes. I've seen him in like different forms, the way he looks. But I like the way you did it here, where it's like this vampire, and he will, he can infect people, and it has its own little army. And what really surprised me was the white witch in the movie, because she reminded me of the old lady from the Wolfman. I mean,
right.
She pulled the voice off so perfectly. So my next question is, what was it like working with the cast on this?
Oh, it was really fun working with them. Most of them were well, everybody that's in the movie were people that I knew. Now, some of them were actors and did things, but others were just friends and people that I worked with. The rancher and his wife, they were friends. Although he was actually in the Sacramento Symphony Chorus with my wife. That's how I knew him, Michael Siegel. And that was his idea to come up with the joke of wearing the nightshirt with all the sheep all over it. When he goes out to kill the coyote, what he thinks is a coyote. But yeah, so what I did was, and then the girl that's in it, Rachel Sense, she actually had worked at Channel 10 some years before on it was a syndicated teen TV show called Scratch. And one day, some years later after that, and it was just while we were trying to put this movie together, she visited the station to say hi to everybody. And the guy who plays the Duds Malcolm character, the guy who gets bitten by the chupacabras first and turns into the vampire zombie creature, he also worked at Channel 10. And she comes in and he's talking with her, and he says to me, "Hey, we don't have a lead lady for this movie yet. Why don't you see if she's interested?" So she was. At the time, she was thinking about being an actress, so that worked out. And then Dan Leese, some of these people I actually stole from Joe Carnahan's movie, because Dan Leese was in Blood, Guts, Bullets, and Octane, Kevin Hale, and Hugh McCord himself, who plays our Duds Malcolm. All of them were in Joe's movie.
And you're even in the movie. Like,
yes. And
seriously, you got the best character name of the whole movie, like hands down. Kurt Rod is my name. That's gotta be like the coolest name ever for a character. That's like it just sounds like it's like the tough guy right there, but yet your character is a savior,
right,
on many occasions. And I swear there was gonna be like a spark between you guys throughout the movie, and so just that name alone, I was like, Kurt Rod. I'm like, that's like the coolest name. That's one of the coolest names I've ever heard for a character.
I'll tell you where I got that name from. It actually, when I was in high school, I had a crush on the girl who sat behind me in class, and I would write these stories where my hero was named Kurt Rod. He was a detective, and he would always save her life somehow. And when we made the movie, I don't know, I was feeling in one of those moods, and I thought, that's what I'm going to call my hero. I'm going to give him my old detective Kurt Rod. I'm letting him use that name.
That's awesome. And I noticed the practical, the effects in the movie were really good. I mean, and so what was that like working on the special effects for the movie?
Well, that was really interesting. Another guy who worked at the station by the name of Rob Neep did our special effects, and he was always really good and way ahead of things with the computer. And he actually did some animation that won some awards. And so he took it on, and he created, we were kind of had a debate about, do we want to, since the idea of it was sort of like one of those old Roger Corman drive-in horror movies, of those days. It had that kind of a feel, I think. At least that's what we were trying to give it. So we were debating, do we do it, computer generated monster, or do we do it with a rubber suit and do it like they used to do? So it was kind of a combination in the end. The head that you see, I think you only see it though in the one scene in the car, is actually, in fact, I have it right here. It's actually, this was made by our makeup guy. This wasn't Rob Neep. This was the makeup guy who made that. And it was, and the thing about that head was that I thought he was making me a mask, but he was just making this to show me what he could do. But he charged me $75 for it. And when he brought it in, I said to him, "How are you going to fit your head in this? It does, the opening's not big enough in the bottom." He says, "Oh, this is just to show you what it's going to be like." And I said, look, on a movie that you're not spending any money to make, you know, a no budget film, when you spend $75 on something, it's gotta have a practical purpose.
Yeah.
And so we use that as a puppet. And that's when it comes popping up out of the,
I saw
out
that.
of the thing.
I remember
anyway,
that.
But anyway, so Rob went to work, and there's a few things that happen in that movie with the effects that are kind of funny. One is, you know, when we're in the cave and Dan Leese, our hero, is firing the gun. Well,
Mhm.
Rob made it look like the barrel is actually going in and out, and the flame is coming out of the end of the gun. But that was all his effect, and the monster coming out of the tree was his effect. And then the lava in the cave, that's actually sawdust and oatmeal and with tomato sauce bubbling on an outdoor hibachi. And
Oh, wow.
what else? What other weird thing?
Yeah, that look. I thought that was CGI. 'Cause it kind of looked like it the way it looked. I'm like, oh, I'm surprised that was practical.
Well, he tweaked it, you know, a little bit.
Yeah.
CG, but yeah, but basically it was it was that. So great. Well, I'm glad you noticed that. What was there another CG thing in there that was kind of fun? Well, we did do this green screen though for the cave. We actually that was one of the things about the movie that was so much fun were the locations, and that was the California Caverns in Cave City down in Calaveras County. But the funny thing about that is the guy who owned the cave, Stephen Fairchild, he owned a number of cave systems, and he they gave tours. And so he was quite happy to let me use the cave to shoot, but because we weren't paying him, he didn't stop the tours. So these tourists would come through the cave, and all of a sudden they'd round a bend, and here's all these zombie vampires, and they were quite startled. But then, as the one guy told me, he said, but then I remembered, oh, that's right, we're in California.
That's funny. That sounds like it could have been an attraction. Like, hey, check this out. Check out this cave. You get to see zombie vampires like trying to go after you.
That's right. That's right.
How long did shooting take, and what other challenges did you face during production?
It actually took a couple of years to shoot it because we were just shooting on weekends and whenever I could get people together. And it's a pretty big cast, as you noticed. And at first I thought that would be to my advantage because I wouldn't have to call everybody together. You know, I just could do these people now and then these people over here. But it did turn into a problem at the end because I did have to get everybody together for the ending sequences. But the other and so part of the problem with doing it only once in a while, like the guy Jim Lane who plays the detective in it, he said later that he was worried that by the end of the movie he'd have he'd have much less hair than he had at the beginning of the movie because he was starting to go bald.
Oh wow!
So he was worried about that. But that wasn't really a problem. Kevin Hale would tell me he'd think we'd forgotten all about it, and then all of a sudden the phone would ring and say, "Hey, you're going to be free this weekend? Let's shoot another scene." So it did take a while, and then after we had finished it, I spent the next year editing it. And what I did was I just go in early morning to the TV station and where I worked, and I would edit. And after a year, we had it, and then I put it in the film festival in New York. Well, first we had it at the film market in New York, the IFFM, and it was interesting because I did get interest in the movie. In fact, I got a letter from a guy at Miramax, Ross Dinerstein, and at the time I didn't realize that Miramax dealt with low budget horror films. I thought they just did these prestigious, Academy Award winning movies. Yeah. And of course, this was way before, all the Harvey Weinstein scandal and all that stuff. But anyway, so I sent him a screener. He wanted a screener. I sent it to him. A couple of weeks later, I call him up to see what he thought of it. And I was told he no longer worked there. And I was thinking, gee, I hope he didn't get fired because he was pushing our movie.
Well, I think that's when he formed his own company. That's when they formed their own company, the Weinstein Company. I think that's when it happened.
Yeah.
So I do remember that.
I think you're right.
And I know it was during that they also did they released a lot of the Asian flicks back then, the Asian, like Jackie Chan and some of that stuff. So I could see that they were releasing some of the lower budgeted stuff.
Yeah.
So that kind of made sense.
Yeah. So that was that. And then they had a thing in those days called the Hollywood Creative Directory, and it was a great useful tool when you were trying to sell your film. They had distributors, and we sent the screeners to everybody, and then we finally got the bite from Spartan Home Entertainment, Silver Nitrate, and so they did it. But here's a funny thing, and that is, as you know, having watched the movie, it has a certain ambiance that we were trying to imitate the old 50s horror films. Well, Kevin Hale comes to me one day and he says, "Look, have you seen the movie they've got on the Spartan website? It's a Chupacabras movie." He said, "But I don't know if it's our movie because it sure doesn't look like our movie." And I thought, well, why would they really have two Chupacabras movies? And this was right at the beginning, before anybody was doing Chupacabras movies. Yeah. And so I looked it up. Well, yeah, there it was, but it was called something else. It was called Bloodthirst: Legend of the Chupacabras, and it had this really gruesome looking monster on the cover. And I thought, I called the distributor and I said, "Is this another movie?" And they said, "Oh no, that's your movie. We just changed the title." So, but then the problem is when people got the movie, they thought they were going to see this, modern gory horror film, and it really wasn't that. I mean, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek, old-fashioned monster movie type of a thing. And so we got a lot of comment about that on the internet, as you can imagine. Yeah. However, I got to say, though, that every film review that we got in print, they actually got a kick out of it. Fangoria magazine got a kick out of it, and Mick Martin's DVD and movie guide liked it, and so did the Sacramento Bee. But of course, I was from Sacramento, so might have been a little home field advantage there. I don't know.
I do love it when it comes to marketing for these films, and yeah, they do change titles and all that, but I like that Visual Vengeance has unearthed these movies again, and I think they're doing a heck of a job. I mean, I've seen a lot of their. I started following them from like the beginning, and they're just an amazing label, and I'm glad that they're bringing these out for the new generation, and I'm hoping they get to see this one as well.
Yeah, well, they're really good, and I'm really pleased with what they've done with it. It really looks good, and of course they've gone back to the original title of the movie and the sequel, and so it's really great to see them out. I love the idea that people can see them again and in this way. And we did so much background material for it. All the extras and stuff was really a lot of fun to do, and I got to reminisce again with all the old cast and crew.
That's awesome. So ever since that, what have you been up to? What's you been up to since the finishing that movie? What's been on the horizon? Well,
after we did the sequel, of course, and we did that just kind of on a whim. One of the actors had said, "Do you think the distributor would want a second one?" So I wrote them and I said, "Would you be interested?" And they immediately said they would. So they must have made some money off of it. I mean, it was in every Blockbuster, no Hollywood Video. So, but anyway, so they sent us a letter of intent to help raise money. So for the second one, it was much more like we did it much more like you'd really do a proper film. It had a production schedule. We shot it within a certain amount of time. It wasn't calling people up and saying, "Are you free this weekend?" We actually had an audition process. We had a budget and all that. So that made it a little different. We still shot it on DV, but it was a more technologically advanced digital video by that time, 16:9 framing, and again we gave it the film look. But after that, what I've mostly done, at least as far as Hollywood is concerned, I had spent a lot of years in Sacramento at KXTV television as a sort of an entertainment reporter, and did a lot of movie reviews. Spent a lot of time on sets in Hollywood, doing behind the scenes type stories and things like that. And in fact, I did so many stories on certain TV shows, one of them being Wheel of Fortune, that one day I showed up and Vanna White says, "Oh, Jonathan, it's so good to see you." And I said to her, Vanna, I think I know you and Pat so well that I could invite you home for dinner. And Pat says, "Not so fast, Jonathan."
That's pretty funny.
But you know, these crews would come up to Hollywood. I would play these reporter parts, and then and that was about it. And then a friend of mine, it's funny, I worked with him in Bakersfield, and he had written a book. It was called Booze, Broads, and Blackjack. And anyway, and I had written a book at the same time called Stop It, You're Scaring Me. And we would appear together at, like, we were at the Los Angeles film book fair, you know, and we did one in Bakersfield. And one day we're there and we're sitting there, and wouldn't you know, some producer comes by and is really taken with this Booze, Broads, and Blackjack thing. And so it ended up being a movie. And so that was actually the last acting part I had. My friend Carl Nacita, who wrote the script and became a producer on the film, and they gave me this part. They'd actually offered me a bigger role, but the bigger role, well, it was a detective, and there was a bed scene, and there was a lot of language in it. And I thought, you know, I spent my whole career never doing anything like that. I don't know that now's the time to start when I'm as old as I am. So so he gave me a smaller part. I play an announcer in the casino.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
So, but that's that's about what I've been doing. I suppose currently you know, I'm still writing scripts and things, and we've still got some ideas for new projects that I hope, one in particular that I hope we can actually get off the ground.
That's awesome. Well, I hope everyone gets to see Blood of Chupacabras. It's coming out next week from Visual Vengeance. This is going to be really exciting because you know, Visual Vengeance is this great label. They're unearthing all these old movies and that we've probably never even heard of, or they've been long gone. And, you know, you get to see with this one, you get to see Jonathan not only direct, but in front of the cameras in what is probably the coolest character ever in Kurt Rod. And so I hope everyone gets to check out the Blu-ray when it comes out. And Jonathan, man, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk about the movie.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Great talking to you.
Well, I hope everyone takes care, and we'll see you next time.
See you then. Bye now.